And thank you to James White, who is the CEO of KBMO Diagnostics. We're here today to talk about inflammation. And I know that a lot of you have talked to me before. You've probably done your own research. There's a lot of information out there on inflammation, especially when it comes to chronic illness and chronic inflammation, because 3 out of 5 people globally per year die from a chronic inflammatory disease. So what are the inflammation triggers, and how is chronic inflammation basically manifested in your body? So obviously diet is a huge trigger, lifestyle, excessive toxins like alcohol, smoking, obesity. There's so many different triggers, but today we're going to talk to James about what the food inflammatory triggers and his test, and how his test is different and better than all the other stuff that's out there, and how I've used it in my own practice to help people to reduce inflammation and to heal disease and to live the happiest, healthiest life possible. So I have James White here from KBMO Diagnostics. If you are not already following them on Instagram, you should definitely go to their page and follow them and keep in touch and learn more, because this is a science that's ever evolving. And as some of you might know, I don't know if all of you know, but I'm a career data scientist. I've always worked in data and machine learning for marketing applications, and I'm a huge data nerd, and I love that now I'm applying data in my health practice. But you have to have good data in order to have good results output. So my first question to you, James, is tell me about what KBMO does and about your data quality.
Perfect. So we're a food sensitivity company, but we are focused on a number of different tests that we offer. But in terms of answering the kind of quality question, we were founded by a gentleman who looked at developing the first HIV diagnostic. So overriding, before I get to kind of quality, we have a kind of infectious disease lens, kind of overviewing everything we do. So we're kind of like a belt and braces approach from kind of day one in terms of how we look at how we do everything. Overarching that, for example, we'll do, for each sample we run 15 standards and controls. So what does that really mean in English versus science talk? And that just means that we're running 15 different standards at the same time to make sure that we're really confident in the quality of the data that we send out. The test that we have as well is the only patented food sensitivity test on the market. So again, we're the only people anywhere in the world who's got a patent for food sensitivity testing. And on top of that, if that wasn't enough, the manufacturing of the test is under FDA guidelines, as well as ISO, and then we have the tests when you send your samples back into us are run under clear high complexity guidelines as well, and we get inspected annually by those guys as well. And on top of that, we have quality deals with a group in Brazil, Mexico, and we have labs in Shanghai, Beijing as well running the testing. So again, I'm glad you mentioned quality, because we've got quite a few of those things going on. And again, but the neat thing is we started off with a very high level of quality based on our kind of infectious disease heritage, which I would argue is steeped in the DNA of the business. And we've really just gone on to encourage that with everything we do in terms of the organizations that we've linked in with as well.
I mean, I've seen such amazing results from over 100 people who have done your test, and clients who have worked with me to remove their food inflammation triggers. And so I innately knew that it must be good quality data, but it's really good to know that it's scientifically backed and that there's a lot of work that's going on behind the scenes to make sure that the data is as efficacious as possible. So thank you for sharing that. I actually just learned something new too. And getting into the nitty gritty of the test, there's a few different tests that you offer, but what are they uncovering?
Yeah, so again, as I mentioned, we have this patented test, and the reason we have it patented, because there's a lot of tests out there today that look at a single pathway. So they look at a thing called IgG, which is telling you, in essence, really what foods you're exposed to, which is helpful, but ultimately not really that useful, because just because you're exposed to something doesn't mean it's bad, because obviously we all have to eat things, so we're going to be exposed to it. So just because someone's telling you what you're eating isn't actually that helpful. What we went on to do is, rather than stop at that point, is to say, that's a really interesting fact, but wouldn't it be interesting to say, of those foods that we are working out that our patients are sensitive to, wouldn't it be cool if we could tell them which ones are actually causing them inflammation? And by doing that, that was the kind of aha moment. That's what we got patented. And then I think that kind of leads into pretty neatly why we get to be the top billing on the 6-week inflammation program, on the basis that we're the only test on the market which is looking at inflammation based on you as an individual. So this test looks at which foods you as an individual consume, and then goes on to tell you which of those foods you're consuming is actually causing inflammation, which, as Lindsay kind of led into, that's the kind of crux of the matter. So that's why this is such an important test, and those are the key reasons why it's different from other things on the market.
That's really important, because years ago, I actually did an IgG food sensitivity test, and it came back with all of these foods that I was sensitive to. I removed them from my diet, but I didn't really see or feel a difference. Now, obviously, foods are important, but how does our gut microbiome also get tracked and tested for in the KBMO test? Because I know that, you know, a lot of people are like, well, what about leaky gut? What about leaky gut? You know, that's definitely an important thing to talk about too.
Yeah, that's a great point. So again, it's a bit of a chicken and egg, really. The question is, what comes first? Is it leaky gut or food sensitivities? And when I first started the business over 10 years ago, we often heard providers say, well, I think the patients have got leaky gut, so we don't use food sensitivity tests. And and it really stuck in my mind. It's like, what do you mean you think? So in essence, really what you're telling me is you're guessing, you're not testing. So our approach was, why don't we come up with a way of having a test which combines both of those things together? So we can tell the provider, does this patient have leaky gut? Or, as we just described, are they inflamed based on an individualized basis on the foods they're testing? So in fact, we've just launched that now, which gives the provider a way of saying, is this patient inflamed, or do they have leaky gut? And the great news is, if they've got leaky gut, then that helps the provider really guide very accurately which supplementation the patient should be on. Because often, I think sometimes patients kind of go, oh my God, I got on all these supplements. What's the basis of that? Whereas here, this test really leads the provider into giving some clarity on what that needs to be. And equally, I think helps the patient in terms of going, I don't want to rattle unnecessarily. If I'm going to rattle with supplements, I want to understand why they've put me on these supplements. And this test does exactly that. So it gives you a way of saying, what is causing leaky gut? And we measure that with 3 different markers. We look at a thing called Candida, which measures a level of dysbiosis in your gut. We then look at a thing called zonulin, which is a unique marker to KBMO, which looks at how well your tight junctions are performing. So in essence, what your gut is allowing in or out. And then thirdly, we look at a thing called occludin, which measures, is there any structural damage going on in the gut as well? So 3 key markers for providers. And the reason we measure 3 is because really leaky gut's a continuum. It's not a yes or no. It's really complex. And so the idea was, if we could give the provider 3 to 6 different markers to look at that, then that would really aid their ability to understand the patient and then help to kind of guide their supplement provision on top of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the concept of small hinges, right? It's the practice that we've brought to market is you don't have to change everything to really live your happiest, healthiest life. You just have to identify what is specific to you and then make those changes in a strategic manner. But I've still found that some people, once they get the results of their food inflammation test, or once they learn that they have a leaky gut indicator or marker, they still feel kind of overwhelmed. So how would you recommend that they address that overwhelm and learn more about how to take action on this information instead of just gathering the information and not doing anything with it?
That's a great point. It's one of the things we put a lot of effort into in terms of often patients feel like a deer in the headlights when they go in and see a provider. They're getting hit with lots of different numbers, and it can be, to your point, overwhelming. So one of the things we tried to do from the onset was make sure the test result was really easy to understand, not only for a busy provider, but also for a patient, on the basis that the patient has to be compliant. Otherwise, the provider is kind of somewhat wasting the patient's time and money. So the idea was to come up with a report, which is only 3 pages long. So the first page shows the foods that you need to eliminate from your diet. The second page shows that in a Manhattan form, so it's easy to do, and it's color coded on the basis that it's red, it's bad, green is good. And I think most of us can respond to that. And the third page now has our gut barrier panel. I was talking to a provider actually only last week, and he told me that he'd been sent a 76-page food sensitivity report back. So again, to your point, it's just overwhelming and frankly not great from the environment on a number of levels. But again, it just doesn't make any sense. So our approach is try and keep it simple. We've got some brilliant science and scientists behind the test. We don't need to try and prove that we're the smartest people in the room. What we want to prove is that we can give you information that's actionable and makes sense. And to that point, what we also did was we provided a 7-day meal plan on the basis, just because you're told you can't eat something, what I was hearing back from providers was, okay, so what, if I can't eat these things, so what can I eat? So the idea was to give the patient a 7-day meal plan, which is individualized based on their test results. So it gives them a way that they can actually move forward on their own journey without necessarily having to always rely on the provider as a kind of crutch, but more to go, look, we're giving you these tools to actually move forward. And then the third element we did was, again, no point chopping down trees for 74 pages of report. Why don't we do something different? Why don't we actually put those results on their phone? So we developed a phone app which has the full test results, so you can check to see what you were tested for. Also has the meal plan on there, so if you're grocery shopping, you're in the store, you've got your phone with you. And thirdly, we showed which of the for each of the foods that that patient was sensitive to, what foods they might cross-react with, where they might find them, and alternatives and substitutes. So we put a lot of effort into trying making sure that when you get your test results, it's something that you can follow through and you can action, versus going, oh my God, this is gobbledygook. There's 76 pages of this rubbish. It's all these numbers. Again, I failed maths at school. God only knows what this really means. So the idea was, how do we simplify it so it's meaningful for a patient, so they can actually take ownership of their health journey, versus necessarily always going, oh God, I can't really understand this, so I'm just going to file it in the too difficult pile. So the idea is to make it simple, easy, and work with great providers who have been smart enough to identify this test and to then offer that to their patient population.
I feel very lucky to have found you, and I've done a lot of research, not only just for my practice, but also for my own health, because as some of you might know, I was diagnosed with a dual autoimmune disease 5 years ago. I told my doctor at the time, one of the 9 doctors that I went to go see, that I'd be willing to drink bleach or put my head into a microwave to cure whatever was going on with me. And a lot of people that I work with have gone through the pain of trying to figure out what the root cause is. They don't want to just take a pill to mask the symptoms. They don't want to continuously take Advil or Tylenol or anything like that, which can actually degenerate your gut lining and make the symptoms even worse. And so, working with a provider to help you understand, but also to hold you accountable, is something that I found is really beneficial to people who feel overwhelmed by this data and are just at the beginning stages of trying to live their best, healthiest life. And so that's why I've created this 6-week program that you talked about in the beginning. It's actually more of a challenge. It's a crush inflammation challenge. It is a requirement to do the Fit 176 test, which does include the markers for leaky gut, and it also does include that 7-day actionable meal plan that you talked about. And it's really super easy to understand. If anybody is interested in seeing what the results look like, I'm happy to share my results from my KBMO food inflammation test. And honestly, I'm, because of my genetics and because of autoimmune disease, it's not a flash in the pan. It's not something that I don't have to keep researching and keep pushing myself. But I need to be held accountable too, because I fall off the wagon. And the summer has been a summer of indulgence and drinking lots of rosé and eating my kids extra ice cream or chicken fingers. And I'm ready to not only do this on my own, but also to help and guide people through this process and challenge them to really address whatever inflammatory triggers. And honestly, to your point again earlier, I was so overwhelmed and so stressed out. I was also not feeling well. And stress and overwhelm and inflammation is like this perpetual downward spiral, because stress can also be a major trigger of inflammation, of chronic inflammation. And so we're going to address that too in the 6-week challenge. If you want to learn more about the 6-week challenge, you can go to the link in my bio. You can apply. It kicks off on Monday. So if you're interested, take action right now. Your health and your life and your happiness, you deserve it. You deserve to put your health and yourself first. And I want to thank James for joining me today. I think that there's a lot more that we could talk about. And I actually have a whole hour-long video that I've recorded with Dr. Dorval, who created the foundation for the tests at KBMO Diagnostics. So if you're really craving more scientific information, go to smallhinges.health and check out that video interview with Dr. Dorval. He told me a lot of things that even went over my head, about the complement proteins and poking holes in healthy cells and what inflammation really is at its root cause. But James, you've explained it really well. And I wanted to just ask you one more question before we wrap up and I let you go. The cost of the tests there's varying levels of tests that you can take, right? I always recommend the more data, the better. And so I always recommend the Fit 176 test, because that also comes with the leaky gut panel and the 7-day meal plan. But can you tell us about some of the other tests that you have?
Sure. So we have 3 other tests. So we have the 176, which again, and we've just been talking about, and that's the 176 means that 176 foods, colorings, and additives. And again, the colorings and additives are key to measure, given they exist in processed foods, supplements, as well as personal hygiene products. So again, that's one of the reasons we measure those colorings and additives. Then we have the Fit 132. Which is 132 foods, colorings, and additives. That also includes the leaky gut panel, the gut barrier panel, and that we've just added, which is also included in the 176. And then we have a slimmed down version, which is the Fit 22, which is 22 of the most common foods, colorings, and additives. And then we've just actually, although the gut barrier panel is included in the 176 and 132, we've also decided to sell that separately. So again, if you're looking to retest just around leaky gut, then you can have that option as well. Because again, the idea is to try and make it affordable as well as available and accessible to people. So the idea is that new gut barrier panel is available as a standalone, but more importantly is included in the 176 and the 132, to Lindsay's comment about making sure you've got as much data as possible. So that was why we've done that as well. So those are the panels that we offer. And again, it's interesting, when we launched the 176, we thought that everyone would be very much focused on the 132 and the 22. I think the world is erring towards Lindsay and more data being a good thing. And I think we've seen a huge growth in that area, because again, I think of the additional information that has created and provided patients and providers in terms of understanding how they can identify which foods are actually are being their inflammatory triggers on an individualized basis.
And one thing that I lied to you about that being my last question. So people have been asking questions in Instagram chat. I've been looking over here on Zoom. I keep forgetting to look over here on Instagram. Your tests are available not just in the United States. So tell us where else in the world you can access your tests.
So one of the great things about the testing is it's a finger stick. So it's accessible all around the world. So we have a company in the UK, so who basically services the whole of the UK and Europe. And we have partnerships in Brazil, Mexico, Asia, New Zealand, Australia. So we're pretty much all around the world. So again, and Dubai, and Thailand. So pretty much if there's a country out there, we've probably got coverage there. Or if not, again, we're working through our provider network. We have over 5,000 providers running the test now all around the world. So again, if people are interested in finding out more information, either come through Lindsay or myself at the info@KBMO Diagnostics or on our Instagram, and we're happy to kind of link you in with our distribution partners. Or if we don't have a distribution partner in that country, I'm sure we can we'll find a way to make sure that we can get you and your clients tested.
Awesome. Thank you, because we had a couple people from Portugal join, and they were hoping that they could get that done.
Well, the nice thing is for the Portuguese is that because we've been operating in Brazil for a while, all our reports and the app is in Portuguese as well. So hopefully we'll be able to find that a way of making that work for them as well.
That's awesome. That's really great to know. Well, I want to thank you again. I want to encourage anybody, if you want additional information on the FIT test, which is the food inflammatory test, patented test. It's the only of its kind. I've seen tremendous results with my clients who have struggled with all sorts of inflammatory responses like bloating and sleeplessness and low libido and stress and anxiety and difficulty losing weight, skin issues, hair issues, autoimmune disease. Like, so many things are impacted by inflammation. And again, 3 out of 5 people per year die from chronic inflammatory disease. So, take your health really seriously, and but let's have fun with it, and let me support you. Let the group support you. We are kicking off the 6-week Crush Inflammation Challenge. You can apply in the link in my bio. You can learn more by going to smallhinges.health. And again, you can reach out to James at info@kbmodiagnostics.com, or reach out to me, info@smallhinges.health. Well, thank you so much. And I'm going to sign off, and I really appreciate your time today.
Great. Thanks everyone for their time. Much appreciated.